All right, y'all. We
Yeah,
are back.
got it.
All right. So sorry for the delay and the disruption. But we just went through chapter 4. We are again here with our well-read book discussion series. And we just recently talked about Maria's story as narrated by or shared with us by the author Natalie Gutierrez. Again, we're exploring the pain we carry for Minority Mental Health Month, also known as BIPOC Mental Health Month. And so we thank you for being here with us. We are going to kick back um, into this and go to chapter 5. And we just went through chapter 4. So just letting you know, there are a lot of chapters in this book. Okay, so we're trying to get through. But so in chapter 5, the author discusses the importance of being vulnerable with family and friends while emphasizing the need for compassion towards trauma. She highlights that trauma can affect daily life, but assures that our core selves remain intact. So the author explores the different parts of a person, such as the reactive part, the protective part, and the vulnerable part, each serving various roles. Ultimately, she stresses the importance of acknowledging and understanding our pain. So we got some questions, and actually, we might not get through all of them because we want to get through these chapters. But some of the questions I'm gonna ask Lauren some questions. Let's see if she'll answer for us. And so the first one was like, how do you think vulnerability impacts your relationships? Like our relationships with family and friends, even our relationships at with like community. What are your thoughts on that?
So being vulnerable means you have to be open and you have to put yourself out there and you have to like share things about yourself. You have to be pretty open. So the lack of vulnerability can impact your relationships negatively, like with friends and family, because they may feel like they don't know you or that they aren't really connecting with you on a deeper level that they may want to connect with you on. Um, I think with community, not being vulnerable with your community, it could almost feel like, it can come off almost as like if you don't care or it's not important enough to you for you to do something about because you're not taking your community seriously. So I think it could be pretty detrimental to relationships if you are not vulnerable and open.
Um, the other one is there's several questions. So the other one I think that's sticking out for me right now is how do you think trauma manifests in daily lives? Like how have you seen it maybe come up in the lives of your friends, things like that, or coworkers, and how does it impact our core selves? And really, what do you think a core self is?
Okay, so I'll answer that question first. I think your core self is who you truly are. I would say it's your own identity of yourself, like how you feel about yourself, um how you truly are, like with yourself in your head, how you feel. I think it's just your true self. Yourself that you're not, being politically correct about or you're not putting on a facade. It's just who you truly are when you go home at night and just are in your space and that's who you are. I would say that um, trauma manifests in daily life. Let's say that maybe you have anxiety, like maybe something traumatic happened, or maybe it's passed down trauma and you experience anxiety. In your day to day life, that can come up as OCD. So it can show up as you doing things like struggling to walk up the stairs to your apartment because you're stuck on step one and you have to do an even amount of double digit number steps. And that can impact a lot of your relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And people can start to like question things about you, have you feel some type of way about yourself, and you can feel it also makes you feel like you can't trust yourself. I know a common thing is checking your door to make sure they're locked so many
Mm-hmm.
times. It's like then it's like a lack of self trust. Like you don't trust yourself to do a certain task, and that's how the anxiety shows up. And then it's every day, and then you're questioning yourself every day, which also makes you uncertain about yourself, which isn't good as well.
Yeah, it's a cycle. Really,
Hmm.
it's a cycle. Um, so answering that question similarly, I think about professional relationships, like professional working. interactions really. And I think we've discussed this before, like in how we show up for each other, or even so, like we're working together and we're working on a project together in um, a professional setting, and you tell me like, like we need to get this done at da, 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 right? And then I respond like, who are you talking to? Like, what you mean we need to get this done? You know what I'm saying? Like, but we're not used to, and I mean that's a very basic like response or example, but it's like because of past trauma, what can happen is that every correction, every critique, every statement, every directive is taken as a negative, even though it's like we just got a project and we got to work on it. Like, what
Mhm.
are we? Let's work on it together, right? And
Mhm.
so, I've in professional settings, I've seen like I always feel like we show up really, unfortunately, mostly as our unhealed selves.
Mhm.
It show up in all these different spaces, and so we often, when that trauma is unchecked and unreflected on, and if we're not doing the work to heal,
Mhm.
then we can be extremely evil towards each other, even when we mean well,
Mhm.
right? And then we can also, like, when someone, again, it's a cycle. When someone says, uh, like, I didn't, like, I didn't mean it that way. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just trying to, let's just work together. Even that is an attack then. So it's a cycle that continues. And so that's like one thing. Um, but yeah. And so I think I'm truly, I think you and I even had conversations about this before though. Like, acknowledging that people are in different places. I think we have this conversation often actually, but like recognizing that people show up
Mhm.
as like where like the person that they are at that moment.
Mhm.
And that might look like I haven't dealt with trauma
Mhm.
by I've experienced. And so when I look at you, you're a mirror for me. And so
Mhm.
I see you as like, it's a threat or something. And it's like, I'm just like trying to be your sister. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just trying
Mhm.
to get along, but it doesn't work that way. Um, and then, and I feel like beginning to slow down and deconstruct where these thoughts come from and where these reactions come from instead of responses, because we react often when it's a
Mhm.
trauma based experience,
Mhm.
instead of responding. But I believe that um, then it can lead to personal growth. But
Right.
again, the word personal is there because we can't control anybody else's growth.
Right.
So and that's the hard part. So and then going back to that first question about vulnerability impacting relationships, um, I think as time has gone on, become less vulnerable than I was. I think before I was really open to sharing um, things going on in my life and stuff like that, and really open to um, telling my story,
Mhm.
like, and for the world to see, like, I didn't have any, like, no boundaries were like, what are about? Like, who cares about
Mhm.
our right? And so because I just it's my story, right? And then I also showed up in relationships that way, and but then recognizing the world is not made up that way,
Right.
right? And so that's the difficult part for me is like, how do you, even family and friends, right? Like you share certain things that are going on, and they like, okay, you strong. And it's like, I am coming to you because I'm losing it right now. And I need
Right.
some. And so, and so again, it goes back to what I said in the first one is that you know, to me, the difficult part is how do you show up when every other folks are not there? Like
Right.
they're not ready for that. Like you're doing the work. So right now I have more of a wall up. I don't share when things happen as often. I don't, you know, so I don't know. Maybe I need to do some work there.
I think that when you're around like people you can trust, like a certain close knit group, it may feel more safer to share.
Hmm.
But I guess there's always a risk when it comes to being vulnerable. Like there is no safety net with that.
Yeah, this is
Yeah.
true. I mean, that's the meaning of vulnerability too, like risk, right? Like there is always going to be a risk in you basically sharing out and putting
Yeah.
it all out there.
Yeah.
Uh, so, and that's a risk that you take. Um, but yeah,
Okay. Well, I can move on to 6 if you
okay.
don't want to do any more questions. Okay. So,
Yeah.
chapter 6 discusses how shame impacts relationships and self-love and emphasizes advocating for oneself. We are reminded to reconnect with the protective and vulnerable parts that help rebuild self-trust and intuition. Knowing oneself and connecting with the inner child are highlighted for healing. So, I have 3 questions for you, Dr.
Okay.
Carter. So, first, how would you define shame and how does it impact relationships and self love? Yikes.
Don't yikes me.
I'm going to go on mute. I'm going to mute myself for this.
She said yikes. Hold on, I'm thinking. So I define shame as like guilt for something that has happened, guilt for um like internalized like right guilt for sometimes a lot of times things that you haven't even you're not even responsible for. You know, like
Yep.
and so then because there's a guilt, it's like you're hiding, like you're hiding that part of yourself. I think it's the opposite of vulnerability completely, right? Like
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
when you feel shame, you're not going to be vulnerable because I'm not going to share the thing that brings me shame, right?
Right.
So that's kind of how I see it. And how does it impact relationships and self love? So in terms of relationships, um, like I was just having a conversation with someone yesterday about people pleasing, right?
Mhm.
And like how it impacts like multiple people in your life and not
Mhm.
necessarily the direct you per se. Like it's not because of you, but you think, right? Like, so people pleasing, this idea that we like just say what people want to say, love bombing, right? Like we're doing whatever we want to do to appease a person because you don't want to lose them, you don't want them to be mad, you don't want them to think
Mhm.
differently, and so I do believe that that is based in shame, right? Based in this like
Ooh.
guilt
Mm.
somehow, and so and so um the in terms of impacting relationships, like how can you be authentically in a relationship if you have shame over something,
Mhm.
and if you in that relationship, going back to the last chapter, cannot be vulnerable enough to say no, I don't like this, no, I don't want to do this, yes, this happened to me and I need to work through it, no, this did not happen and it's pissing me off that it didn't, yes, you did this to me and we need to talk about it, right? Or um or like it even like because the chapter talks about self-trust as well,
Mhm.
like so because part of that shame is you not being honest with yourself first and foremost. Like if there's shame, it's because like there's reasons for the shame, right? That I don't believe are like internal.
Mhm.
So, well, I believe that the shame becomes internal because outside we've been taught that this is something we can't talk about, this is something we can't share. I can't tell you that I'm depressed. I can't tell
Mhm.
you that I'm struggling here. Like
Mhm.
everybody else is enduring racialized trauma. How dare I be depressed because of that trauma when
Mhm.
everybody else continues to show up? But are we really
Mhm.
showing up as our full selves? So like I think shame looks like sometimes when we like in a like we're constantly attacked by social ills and we continue to act like it's not. So even hubris or extreme pride looks like shame.
Mhm.
So
Wow.
yeah, but and so I truly, how can, and then it's the same thing. Like, how can I love myself when I'm not truly being myself? I can't love me if I'm like feeling shame for something that somebody else did to me, right? If I'm feeling shame for, like the ills that I'm experiencing and the way that I'm able to deal with them or I'm not. So, um, and I think so, and I for me, like I think a lot of that, the going back to shame as guilt, for me often is like, how dare I like be sad or upset when I know all these other people, right, have gone through similar things or something worse or are not even here, right?
You're
Because but then it's just like, Nicole, come on, girl. Like let's get it together, baby. Everybody
you're
works through their things differently.
and you
So
don't know what they went through in private
yeah.
also.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So my second question is how can reconnecting with protective and vulnerable parts help rebuild self-trust and intuition?
Okay. So and again, these chapters are really connected, like deeply
Mhm.
connected. But to me, I think like you have to be honest with yourself first in order, like again, that shame to me is like something is going on, something is happening, but you feel guilt about it, even if it is like pain. Like, right. And so just being honest, like doing the work to figure out where that came from. Like, why am I feeling this way when I show up? Why am I like, why is this, like, why do, um, so instead of, it's just giving yourself an opportunity to be vulnerable. I feel like we keep and this book is specifically for people of color, but I'm adding the gendered lens here, right? Like so when well, and really all the lenses are gendered, but adding the woman's like component to it. It's like we're expected to be demure and like soft, right?
Mhm.
But at the same time, like have like a cape and armor on at the same time. And so to me, but in this world, she's asking us actually to like kind of blend the two, like to be okay with both, like bringing them together and work through the softness, like seeing one as not like necessarily negating the other. So the vulnerability is also just as great as the protective factors, but knowing when they should be used, right? Like knowing
Mhm.
when and how we're using them, and knowing when and how those things are creating like continuing trauma for us. And so um, I just think somehow it's important for us to kind of navigate to understand we could be both and. We're in this world, we're asked to check boxes so often. We're asked to be strong, show up, just show up. Like it's been come on, I'm not even gonna go in it. Right now, we're asked to show up. So I'm gonna put this out there because here's the thing, and I'm not gonna say names of things, but we're being asked to women of color, specifically Black women, right now, are being asked to lead politically, okay, in this world and just show up, lead. Come on, lead, Lauren. It's time. Like we haven't been doing it all along, right?
Yeah.
Like we are not what movements are made of. So we're being asked to lead, but then in the media we're seeing the death of who, right? A young girl
Yeah.
begging for her
Black
life.
woman. Uh-huh.
So if we cry for that, if we're sad about that, if we speak up about that, it's a problem. We haven't been allowed to even address that. I just posted on Facebook yesterday about it.
Mhm.
Like, so we're the 44,000 showing up for her.
Mhm. Mhm.
Imagine if we showed up for Black girls who begged for their lives, who said, like, please don't hurt me. What if we showed up for the soft Black girl?
Mhm.
Wow. At the same time, leading movements. We could do both. We definitely can, but we've been taught in this world that it's like there is no softness if you are a woman of color. That is not a thing that exists. It's like, you know. So I don't know, like these things we have to that I mean that has to be an internal struggle. And when I say struggle, not like a bad struggle, but an internal thing that we work towards is like kind of reconnecting with both and recognizing that they can exist simultaneously.
Together. Yeah.
I know I just went on a whole situation, but that pissed me off like yesterday. It's
No,
relevant.
yeah. Good. It's good that it's good that you're using your platform to talk about it. Did you
Yeah.
want me to do question 3 or did you want to go down?
We can. It's kind of similar, so I can go to the next one.
Okay.
But I 1 second because I didn't do this, and I wanted to make sure that I said her name is Sonia Macy or Massey,
Mhm.
because we also don't say her or their names often. So I just want to make sure that we put her name out there. And if you don't know about Sonia Massey, just make sure that you look up her. She is a Black woman who was killed. She's a Black woman actually at the intersections of disability as well. So, and was killed by an officer who she was begging for her life from. So, pose no threat, but to be Black in a body is a threat at all times. Anyway, let's go to the next section. I'm saying a lot of things. We gonna get shut down? No.
No.
Um,
We're still up.
so we made it to part 3 of the book, which reminds us that we are not our pain and that there is more to our lives than our negative experiences. I mean, I feel like these things are just like kind of flowing. It's like, I don't know. But we are reminded that letting go of pain does not mean the people who hurt us are forgiven, but that sometimes we might hold on to legacy burdens because we fear losing our identities. Holding on to this pain reminds us how to survive and cope. And releasing our burdens and pain can give us more space to fall into our whole identity and have compassion for ourselves and others. Lauren, what book does that remind you of?
The sugar jar.
Yes. Did
I was
she
gonna
talk
say the
about
pain. I was
huh?
accidentally gonna say the pain we carry, but it's the sugar jar.
Yeah. And she talks about the same thing, removing those
Yeah.
things, like releasing some of that stuff so that we can have space. Like if you
Mhm.
are trauma, if your whole identity is trauma, who are you? Do you even
Oh
know
my
who you are supposed to be?
Right.
Like, if everything is based in trauma, because that's not you. That's not like it's not like I think about trauma bonds too. Like a trauma bond, like, can you imagine what that bond would look like if it wasn't based in trauma? Y'all might not be together at all. Y'all might not be friends.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, like, but then it could be the greatest experience ever if it wasn't based in trauma. But we don't
Yeah.
know what that looks like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, in this section is chapters 7 and 8, and these are our last two chapters for today. So, chapter 7 delves into the growing up experience by centering Ayana's story and how those feelings lead to a scarcity mindset. The chapter discusses how supremacy culture and capitalism can perpetuate the belief that there is not enough for everyone, fostering insecurity and competition for resources. Ayana's story illustrates intergenerational trauma with abuse, um, with her shaping, messed up, it went away. With abuse shaping her daughter's experiences and perceptions of love. So we got several questions here, and I'm only gonna ask some.
Okay.
So let me ask this because um I do first, let me just say, what about Ayana's story and this idea of the transmission of trauma across generations sticks out to you?
What stuck out to me is the crabs in the bucket mindset and like the scarcity mindset of like, if I don't get it now, I never get it. Or
Mhm.
like, I'll never have this. I think it takes away from gratitude. Even if you don't have a lot or you don't have what you want, like thinking of that there's only a little bit and not enough for you takes away, I think, from gratitude and you appreciating what's in front of you.
Mhm.
Um, the second part that what was the next story? So, the trauma across generations that stuck out to me is that I think that like some of the trauma is passed down like through physical experiences, like you experiencing, like your mom experiencing trauma and then her physically displaying that and then you picking it up. But I think some of it is like genetic, like passed down just through some traumatic genes or something. So those are some things that stuck out to me. And it also makes me think about the good things you could pass down. Like, what about the positive things that aren't traumatic, like the beautiful things that you could pass down? Like, I know we're focusing on passing down trauma and generational trauma, but like, it gives me a hope in a way. I know that sounds kind of weird, but it gives me hope in a way that you can also pass down good things. Like, if you change something, you may pass down a positive mindset or a resilient attitude or multiple things. Like, you could pass down good things as well.
I have so much to say about that. So one, I want to clarify that this chapter talks about Ayana's story, but also they're Dakota and Malia. Dakota and Malia are her daughters. So, but Ayana is a Native American cisgender woman from New Mexico, specifically the Navajo Nation reservation. And so I mentioned that because I think there are some idio I'm gonna use this word idiosyncrasies, but some considerations that we need to think through when thinking about scarcity models, capitalism, supremacy culture, and native communities, um, and its impact on those communities. You said a lot, Marie, and I was like really kind of thinking through that, but I think we discussed it the last time, the first discussion that about epigenetics. And so it's a whole and really weathering, this idea of weathering. And so these are these ideas that trauma is so one, not weathering aside, but trauma. So epigenetics is the study of right genetics, but like the life of our genes and how they are like carried down, how they are transformed. DNA is transformed. And research shows that stress on a good day and trauma on a bad
On a good.
day transforms and continues to carry, right? Like it's genetically passed down. I think we talked the last time that talked about how autoimmune disease is I truly believe, and research is starting to show that autoimmune disease is something, one of those things, one of the results of unhealed trauma that has been passed down. And for me, I think for a long time I'm like, I'm mad because like, could y'all just heal your trauma so I could be good? Like, like so don't carry, like we don't have to keep going here. Like, hello. But I also think the reality is that my trauma can also impact you, right? And we're not genetically connected, not in, like not like we're not sisters or anything like that, but through blood. Well, maybe we are like back, in Africa. But you know what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
my trauma and how that trauma manifests in our relationship can still impact you on a genetic level eventually. And then begin, if I am evil to you and we're living, like say we like sis or like cousins, not cousins, but sisters, and we move in together, we roommates, and I'm horrible to you. I talk to you nasty, like I denigrate you every single day. I make your life a living hell. You have nowhere to go. You have nowhere to go. You're just there. You show up like you like, look, I'm trying here, and I'm just like, right for years.
Mhm.
That's going to impact you, and then you get pregnant. That's going to carry on. So it is
Yeah.
not. It's not just like within family, the way that we think, like
Like
biological.
blood related, yeah.
That trauma is like mutating, like that trauma mutates. Love transfers. Oh, that's a sticker.
That was a bar. You should put that across the screen.
But it does. It does. Like I know, I personally come from a family that I don't know what type of trauma my mother and my grandmother's experienced. But I do know if you here and you had to change your name from one state to another, you identified as one thing in Arkansas and then started identifying something else in Flint, Michigan, and then something else in Detroit, and then something else in California, something happened.
Mhm.
There's something happening there that you're running from that has traumatized you. But you're not talking about it, but it's impacting your body. And then you're pregnant, and you're pregnant again, you're pregnant again, and then those children pregnant, and they pregnant again, right? Like, and so it's just passing down. And I know that I cannot. I truly believe that's why I have like, how does one person have 3 autoimmune diseases? And that to me is I really love this book, and I love discussions like this because it demonstrates the relationship, if ever, between mental health and physical health and spiritual health.
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
we talking about our ancestors, like pulling back, and that means we got to heal their stuff. We got to figure out what was going on and put it down because that's not our burden.
And you don't
But
even
that's
know
the
if you'll ever
spiritual.
find the answers to that. You know what I'm saying?
You got to just keep trying. Right?
Yeah,
As long
yeah.
as you're trying, right? Like as long as you're working towards
Mhm.
that. So
Mhm.
yeah, yeah, that's a spirit. The spiritual. I mean, and I know not everybody like is really on that, and you don't have to say spiritual, but you are connected to the. If you want to say biological, genetically connected to your ancestors, right? That is still carried down. So that is a connection. The biological emotional and physical connection. And we need to work to kind of heal all of those aspects. So, and without doing that, then that trauma continues to transmute, or like that's a better word than what did I say before?
You said trauma transmutes and love
Transfer.
transfers. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Soapbox over. Okay, get over. You want to go to the next one?
Yeah, we can go to the next one. Okay. Chapter 8 explores how historical trauma has affected our ancestors, impacting our genes and survival strategies. The author suggests that we can find hope and healing by connecting with ourselves and addressing generational curses like abuse patterns and legacy burdens passed down in families. So, Dr. Carter, let me read through these before I pick one. Okay, what are the potential implications of addressing abuse patterns and legacy burdens passed down in families? Any as suggested by Natalie.
The implications. And so for those who are like not familiar with certain terms, like um basically what are the consequences of addressing abuse patterns and legacy burdens? We talked about legacy burdens the first time, which are like these cultural and familial burdens passed down, um, and families. So to me, the and so implications, I see it as positive. So if we're potential implications of addressing them, so addressing, so one, we're acknowledging that these patterns exist,
Mhm.
and that's the first step. And then, but then that means if we're addressing it, we're doing the work to kind of to explore how those patterns show up in our lives, how they
Mhm.
impact our lives, and how we kind of, project those experiences onto others. I believe that the consequence of that is healing ourselves so that we can create and nurture other healed folks, so that we can show up in a capacity that is healed, but also so that when somebody comes towards us who is burdened, who is traumatized, who is not working towards their healing, we're able to, we know that we have a boundary, that that is when the protective part comes up, right? We are able to protect ourselves because we know who we are now, and we are able, if they're willing, to like kind of give them resources, like these are, let me, like, we don't have to show up this way no more, like we don't have to do this anymore. Like, if you want, let me go, I'll go with you, right? Like, I'll hold your hand, let's work through it together, here are some resources. And so I feel like it, my whole thing is with Hughes is like building these communities of care, like these spaces where it's like a giant hug, if you will. It's like, like, if I know that we all have times when things are rough, but trauma is different, right? That's a different type of experience. And so I feel like when you're traumatized and you're trying to navigate through, or even before you get to a point where you believe you can, you need that hug. You need that hug, or those resources. Those are those people. That might be that medication. That might be that therapist. That might be a meditation mat. That might be right, like walking in the park. That might be your friend on the phone. The essential oils, the music, right? It's a giant, like, so. I believe eventually by addressing these things, we can heal communities, not just ourselves. Was that a mic
Right.
drop? No, just
Yes,
one.
that was a metro.
All right. So I think that was one of several questions for that one, but that was the last question on our list.
You
And
want me
we're
to?
at 7:03. And the last
Okay.
time we took you all way over. So um I just want to say we had, to me, a jam-packed discussion. We didn't go through all of the questions. If we would have been here for 2 hours or longer. But we hope you feel well read and fed by this discussion and Natalie Gutierrez's work. We will be here same time next week to continue our discussion of Minority Mental Health Month and delve deeper into the pain we carry. Until then, make sure that you're taking care of yourselves and each other. And remember, if you or someone you know is struggling, reach out to a mental health professional. Again, you can feel free to go to our website if you need any help with that. The website is at the bottom of our screen. You can also email hello@hughesinstitute.org if you need really some assistance really quickly, or call us at 937 540-4313 for assistance navigating to get a mental health professional. We want to thank again our sponsor, NAMI Montgomery County, for sponsoring our book discussion. And we are so happy for those who joined us. We're glad we were able to get the Instagram live working. For the first part, it wasn't, but and then thank you for those who joined us on other platforms and loved the live. This will be posted on YouTube, edited a little bit to clean it up, along with all of our other videos. And again, we'll be back next week the same time. Lauren, got anything to say?
Yeah, someone's sending us love on Instagram. I think it's Chic Wellness, and they ask, can they ask a question?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, sure. But it might be like a little few seconds delayed because I just got the
Oh, it's
message.
okay.
So let's see if we get something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I haven't got a response yet. But
Okay.
if they want to ask questions, Chic Wellness, you could go to our website, email us. We will be back next Wednesday at the same
Yeah, I
time.
don't think she might not be on there anymore.
Oh,
The
no,
same.
wait, I got it.
Oh, you got it?
Yeah.
Oh, there it is.
Okay. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm gonna actually copy it and put it here. So this is a question we had from Chic Wellness. And she asked, I had a chance to read a bit of the book and it resonates with me, especially reflecting on my experiences a few years back and the trauma within the Dayton community. I don't think the whole thing. But our community often, come on now. We getting them all now. Hold on. Our community often has a crabs in a barrel mindset where the attitude is, I haven't seen anyone like you do it, so you shouldn't either. It contrasts with the supportive and growth oriented mindset I experienced living in Washington, D.C., where the community was focused on helping each other thrive and succeed. This book has made me reflect on how we as a community can better support each other in our journeys toward healing and resilience. So, and how can we use the themes from this book to foster a stronger, more empathetic community in Dayton? Oh, so that is a really great question. I'm gonna put that question on here. And second, technology is great.
When it wants to be, not all the time.
There we go. So this is her question. Sheep wellness. How can we use the themes from this book to foster a stronger, more empathetic community and dating? Um, that's a loaded question. And that is actually perhaps a question we can address in our next discussion, but like fully. But I do want to say there's a lot happening in dating right now, like a lot of violence to us and by us, right? And um, but I am much of what Gutierrez talks about is that which takes place by us, and then not by us, to us, but often by those we love. So like she talks a lot about family. She talks a lot about friends. Um, and then she talks about these larger societal, you know, not barriers, but burdens and traumas. And so I actually think, man, that could be an entire project. Come on, She Wellness, let's come together and do it together. But it could be like it's needed. Even from like if you use the themes that are so for example, part 3, the name of that is We Carry the Pain and Resources of Our Ancestors, right? So one of the things in Hughes that we've tried to do, we used to have these brunches, and the brunches were like brunch, like a healthy communities and conversation brunches. One of the main purposes was not just always looking at health and wellness as this negative thing, right? Like as this thing, like, oh, we sick, and so like we come together because we're sick. And often we do need spaces where we can come together in support of each other and be supported by others because we're sick or because we're navigating violence, navigating illness, navigating X, Y, and Z. But it also was an opportunity to engage in conversations about what we have learned from our ancestors that maybe we forgot. What about gardening? Like, what about gardening can heal us, right? That we learned. Like my grandmother taught, like my grandmother gardened, like grew food, right? That came back from her roots in Louisiana, right? Like, and so like that's what she did. She farmed. And what happens when that information is not passed on and we're not able to pass it on to, I don't have children, but I feel like I do have children in like I was a college professor, right? Like so like what if I was able to talk about that in my class and actually demonstrate that? How would that have changed those students from Dayton, right? Like proper, or Cleveland, or Detroit, right? Like to see like these practices have been practiced like prior to like African enslavement. They were brought here, stolen, right? But we remembered and they cured us and it can cure us still. Those things are still taking place in small pockets through Dayton, but we focus so much, like you said, like this crab in a barrel, like nobody's done it. And I'm gonna be real, like we need to have a conversation, chic wellness, because and I know actually we contacted each other to have a conversation, but because this is important. This is it is we Lauren, do you remember conversations that we had with some community partners? And it was
Mhm.
the same comment. Like when you are trying to do something different, you always get pushback. And I don't think it's Dayton specific. I think it is. There are some reasons, and I do think it's steeped in trauma. It's steeped in like it only can be me. But that's not how we transform. That's not how we heal. we don't heal individually, like by ourselves. We heal in community. I mean, part of it is like you got to deal with the stuff, right? And that's more of a independent, I say, like thing. But healing can come from working together in coalition with each other, like seriously. So it is a great question, but that's only one example, right? Like, so those things can be used to start conversations, to have activities that connect with them. So I don't know. That's part of it. I feel like I could answer this question by breaking down each chapter if you want me to, but we don't have time for that. But like, but it actually could be definitely applied, and I would like to talk more about that. So thank you for um, asking that question, and I will email you back today. All right, we were for real talking, messaging. So that was a great question. Are there any more questions?
No, I don't have any more. Thanks everyone for watching and joining. I saw some people on IG Live, so thanks for joining.
Yeah. And again, we'll be back at 6 next week. We'll
Mhm.
both be in different places, I think. I will be traveling. So where I'm at, uh, the background will be different. It's weird anyway. It's like half blurred. Come on, do better, StreamYard.
Same
All
yard.
right. Like, so, but yeah, we'll be on the move next week, but we will be here at 6. So thank you all for joining us.
Thank
Um,
you.
and have a wonderful rest of your week.